tomorrow morning is my only session for tomorrow. And it is about how to get people to come to church and how to get people to stay coming to church. That is tomorrow's, okay? Let me repeat again, I'm only doing it in the morning because I will be in the air when the second one is going on, flying probably over Manitoba by that point, okay? And we are starting earlier tomorrow, 9:15, because I have a very short window to get to Calgary and not miss my flight, okay? So I'm giving myself a little more time. For those of you that say, oh, but I want to go see Jennifer Jill tomorrow too. Jennifer Jill, I went to the office and I confirmed that she is presenting 2 tomorrow afternoon. Okay, she's making up for the one she missed on Monday, and then she's doing her final one. And she is speaking tomorrow morning, but if you go to hers tomorrow morning, you will not come to this one, obviously, okay? So if you want to go to both, come to mine in the morning. At what time? 9:15, and then you can go to Jennifer Jill in the afternoon. Is everyone clear on that? And it's in the schedule, 9:15 tomorrow morning, okay? I don't want to hear anyone tomorrow go, I thought it was 9:30. I have told you, okay? And it's in the thing. I've done my job, okay? All right, and I will announce it again at the end of our presentation today. All right, let's get started. So today we're going to learn and try to understand the role of emotional, social, and familial forces in decision making. Folks, it is not true that you make decisions for Jesus just on truth. That's just not true. And if you think that's true, you don't know yourself. That's not true. You say, well, it's true for me. No, it's not. You're lying to yourself. Okay? And you say, well, you're going to have to prove it. I'll show you. Okay? And we're going to understand how to, and I put this in quotation marks, how to persuade people to make a decision for Jesus. I don't like the word persuasion because it has a connotation to it, but you're going to see that my version of persuasion is not what you would typically think of persuasion, okay? So hold your judgment. Don't judge me too hard right now, okay? So we're going to start by watching an experiment, okay? Watch this experiment closely. They'll explain what's going on.
Stop. Pay attention. Take a look at this crowded waiting room. These people may appear to be waiting for the eye doctor, but they're actually waiting for the first test subject in our hidden camera experiment. And here she is, right on time for her 12 o'clock appointment.
Hi, how are you doing?
This woman thinks she's here for a free eye exam.
Have you been here before? No, it's my first time.
What she doesn't know is that everyone else in this room is working for us.
I'll be with you in just a couple minutes.
Today we're running an experiment on social conformity, and the test starts now. Did you hear that? These people sure did. It doesn't take long for our test subject to notice a pattern. Beep means stand up. But why? And if you were in her shoes, what would you do the next time the tone sounds? While you might think you make your decisions all on your own, when it comes to peer pressure, all too often, your brain is just following the crowd. It's all around you, every day, an invisible force you're probably not even aware of. It affects what you do, how you think, and who you are. It's called social conformity, or peer pressure. And while it might not sound like a good thing, it's actually not so bad. The truth is, your brain craves synchronicity and takes comfort in the ease and efficiency of just going with the flow. And whether it's simply knowing what to wear in the morning, supporting your team at the big game, or even marching off to war, we're all programmed to be part of the group. And that's because your brain knows that there's power in numbers. We set up a hidden camera experiment to see if this woman would stand up at the sound of this tone, simply because everyone else is. You might be thinking you'd never go along with this. Or would you? After just 3 beats, and without knowing why she's doing it, this woman is now conforming perfectly to the group. But what happens if we take the group away?
Elaine, please.
Okay, now she's alone. The crowd is gone and nobody is watching her, except our hidden cameras. What do you think she'll do? She's now conforming to the rules of the group without them even being there. Now, watch what happens when we introduce another outsider who doesn't know the rules.
Have a seat and they'll be out in just a couple minutes. Thanks so much.
Everybody was doing, so I thought I was supposed to.
Think she'll teach the new guy what to do? We kept the cameras rolling as more unsuspecting patients arrived. And slowly but surely, what began as a random rule for this woman has now become the social norm for everyone in this waiting room. Here to explain what's going on in their brains is Jonah Berger of the University of Pennsylvania.
This sort of internalized form of herd behavior is part of what we call social learning. Starting at a very early age, when we see members of our group perform a task, our brains literally reward us for following in their footsteps.
When I saw it, exclude more conflict.
But it can all...
Yvette.
I'm trying to get this. There we go. Come on. All right. All right. Now, you all saw that. You realize how benign it is just to stand up at a beep, right? But think about being part of a family, or being part of a church, or a community, how strong the forces are to keep you from change, because you don't want to be an outsider. And unfortunately, we have labeled these people as being hard-hearted. You know, they're not intellectually robust enough, or they're not committed enough to Jesus. Not like we are. That's just wrong, folks. That's not what's going on here. We have to recognize the power of social forces in our decision making. And we all do it. Okay? It's not them versus us. We all do it. Okay? So, how important, let's go down to number 2. How important a factor do you think emotions play in decision making? Huge. Break that down. What do you mean by huge? Give an idea.
Oh,
80 or 90%. Okay. Anyone else? What do you think? Well, how big a deal is emotions in our decision making? How many think it's less than 80 or 90%? Put your hands up.
I think we all have emotion.
Right, we all do.
And so based on what we see and hear, we make decisions based on.
So do you think it's more than 80 or 90%? You think it's more. Okay, so let's see the hands who say it's less. It's less. Okay, who thinks it's more? Who thinks she's Goldilocks and got it just right? Okay, actually, it's 100% of your decision making is emotional. 100%. It's not that truth doesn't inform it, but what you're doing is you're trading one emotion for another. I'll give you an example, okay? So you decide that you're going to make a decision for Christ that is uncomfortable to you personally, okay? But you're not making the decision for uncomfortable feelings, but you are making the decision so you'll feel better about yourself. You're trading one emotion for the other. The idea that emotions don't play a role, they play an enormous role in our decision making. It doesn't mean truth and rationality and some of these other factors don't play a factor, but at the end of the day, you do things because you want to. That's why if you notice the language, because the Apostle John got this, you notice how the Apostle John is always using the word love? He says, do not love the world. Love God. That's emotional language, folks. Right? So emotions play a huge role. Social, we just saw it on the video, makes a huge role. And so how do these come together? And when we're working with people, how do we use this to our advantage, okay? Now, I'm going to not watch the video on this one because we're pressed for time. But you remember the story of Jesus and the Samaritan woman, right? Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. The disciples went into Sychar to buy food. Jesus sat at the well because he was tired and he was thirsty and he was hungry, okay? And this woman shows up in the middle of the day to draw water. Women didn't do that back then. Women went together in the morning and in the evening. It was one of those girl time hangout times. She went in the heat of the day by herself. She was the town, you fill in the blank, right? The other women had ostracized her. She probably had some kind of relationship with one or two of their husbands. She was ostracized, so she came alone in the middle of the day, and Jesus, he's not a dummy. He knows what's going on. And if you watch how the conversation unfolds, she's trying to mask her emotions through logic, because that's what we do. Okay? So he starts talking to her, and it starts going to an emotional level. How is it that you, a Jew, are asking me, a woman, for a drink? Remember, there's two conversations going on in every conversation. That's the presenting conversation. That was not her concern. Her concern was, why are you accepting me? Because for a Jew to accept water from a Samaritan was unheard of. If a Samaritan walked by a Jew who was eating and their shadow touched the plate, the Jew would stop eating and dump it upside down. That's the hatred between the two of them. And here's a Jew asking her. He is trusting her. So you see what I'm saying? There's two conversations going on. So Jesus is going to try to go for the second one, right? The important one. And when he starts, if you watch the conversation, how it unfolds, once she realizes he's getting in there, she's scared, she's vulnerable. Men just used her. They don't care about her. She goes and tries to talk about the temple and where you should worship. She externalizes again. She puts up a wall. And Jesus patiently lets the conversation flow, and then he comes back and he says, go call your husband. Ooh. And she says, I have no husband. She was telling the truth. And he's like, yeah, I know you don't, but the man you're with now is not your husband. You've had 5 others before that. Right? He's going deep. He's going for that second conversation. Do you understand the stuff that I've been teaching all week, how it comes together? I think this is the greatest conversation, by the way, evangelistic conversation in the entire Bible. Okay, you can just read that and study that over and over again and see how he worked with people, right? So, she realizes when she says, I know when we know that when the Messiah comes, he'll, this, that, and everything else. And Jesus says, the one who is speaking with you, I am he. And she could not believe her eyes. And she runs away and she starts witnessing everywhere. Come learn about a man who told me everything I've ever done. Could this be the Messiah? Now here's the amazing thing. Back then, you may not be aware of this, but women were considered unreliable witnesses. They were not allowed to testify in court. Women's testimony was not valid because women were considered weak-minded, emotional, and all sorts of... I'm not defending it, I'm just explaining it, okay? Okay, are we clear on that? Okay, that's not my view, just make sure we get that out there, okay? But here's the thing. When he communicates to her, I am he is lifting her above all her mistakes, social norms, and everything else, and treating her with a dignity that women didn't get treated with. And this is the town harlot. He's gotten to her heart. And then it affects her actions. And she tells everyone, and she's so excited, it says the whole town went out to meet him. They were compelled by her testimony. Okay? So Jesus understood the social problems she was facing, the emotional problems she was facing, and he also dealt with some of the theological things she threw up as a smokescreen and brought it all together, and he saved that entire town. Because at the end they said, we believed because you said, but now we don't believe because of you. We witness and testify that this is the Savior of the world, is what the Samaritans said after spending a weekend with him. Incredible, right? Yeah. But it wasn't just a truth versus truth thing going on like we like to think it is. It was an emotional, social conversation. Is that clear? Okay? So this is where we're headed. I know I kind of explained a lot, but we have so much to cover. I don't want us to... No. There we go. All right, so let's move on to here. So this is a quote from the book Gospel Workers from Ellen White. Ellen White understood this. The Lord moved her to say it. Look what she says here, and you've got some blanks here. To all who are working with Christ, I would say, whenever you gain access to the people by the fireside, improve your opportunity. Take your Bible. Do we use our Bible when we witness to people? Yes. Am I saying that the Bible is irrelevant in witnessing? No. But is the Bible enough? No. Take your Bible, open before them its great truths. So we have to teach doctrine and truth, correct? That is part of our witness. I'm not suggesting otherwise. But then look, your success will not depend so much on your knowledge or your accomplishments as upon your ability to find your way to where? To the heart. And I put a parenthetical, emotions. You see that? By being what? Social. And coming close to people, you may turn the current of their thoughts more readily than the most able discourse. So she's saying by being social is more powerful than the Bible study you're giving. Being friendly, being warm, being kind, addressing loneliness, giving table fellowship and saying, I accept you. That is embodying the gospel. That is putting shoes on the gospel. That's what people need. People aren't looking for a new doctrine. They're looking for their interests to be met, right? We've talked about that. The presentation of Christ in the family by the fireside in small gatherings and private houses is often more successful in winning souls to Jesus than our sermons delivered in the open air. And that has been my experience. Coming close to people is more effective than big preaching events, even though I like to preach to the moving throng or even in halls or churches. Here's another one. You'll find great success in coming close, that's social, to the people in these Bible lessons. The workers who labor in connection with the ministers should make special efforts patiently and kindly emotions to inquirers to an understanding of the truth. Are social and emotional factors important in your witness? Tremendously important. I remember when I was a young pastor in training and I was a Bible worker and I would do Bible studies with people, and man, I would seal up the arguments on different things, and then I would call for a decision, and they would agree with the doctrine, but not do it. And I would leave their house scratching my head going, what is wrong? They would affirm the Sabbath, and I would say, I do the traditional clearing questions I'd been taught to do. Is it clear to you from the Bible that Saturday, the seventh day of the week, is the Sabbath? And they would say, yes. I said, do you have any questions about the Sabbath? No, it's very clear to me. And I'd be like, oh, yes. And then I'd say, so are you ready to follow Jesus and keep the Sabbath? No. And I was stumped. And eventually I got bold enough to say, well, what is the problem? And invariably, it was never a biblical problem. It was always a social or emotional problem. And I said, hang on here. So what is really driving people? And you say, those people, I follow the Bible first, then my emotions and social relationships. No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't. Maybe sometimes, but most of the time, we're no different than them. Okay, here's another one. Now, this is a really important quote. The special work of Satan has been to provoke controversy. What's provoking a controversy? What can we call that in our vernacular? To argue, to fight. You ever start talking to someone about faith and it turns into an argument? Is that the work of God or the work of Satan? It's the work of Satan. That there might be strivings about works to no profit. He knows that this will occupy the mind and the time. It raises the combativeness. So that's the emotions, and quenches the spirit of conviction in the minds of many, drawing them into diversity of opinions, accusations, and prejudice, which is a social thing, which closes the door to the truth. So how I am with people emotionally and socially could close them to the truth. Are you cluing into me? I don't understand what's wrong with you. I don't understand. It's plain. Folks, I've discovered something about us, about human nature. If somebody says something to us that opposes our personal point of view, no matter how right they are towards us, our knee-jerk reaction is to resist. Let me give you a funny story that really happened years ago. My mom is a very silly person. She doesn't mean to be silly. She just engages the rest of her before she thinks. I have story after story. I was telling a friend the other night some of these stories. He says, you got to go on the road with the comedian thing because you can't make this stuff up. And this is one of the stories I told him. So my mom lives quite a ways away from us, so I only get to see her a couple times a year around Christmas and in the summer. So I was visiting her in the summer, and she knows that I absolutely love pies. My favorite dessert is pie, homemade pie. I don't like the store-bought stuff, right? I love pies. The only kind of pie I don't like is mincemeat. That's the only pie I don't like, right? But all the other pies, oh man. But my favorite pie, there's a competition between the two, is a good apple pie that my wife makes that she gives me every year for my birthday. I don't want cake, I want pie. So she makes me an apple pie every birthday. Or coconut cream pie. Oh my goodness. If you're ever in the Maritime Provinces, go to a Big Stop Irving and ask for their coconut cream pie. It's like this thick, like this, and it is amazing. Anyway, so she made me a coconut cream pie for my arrival. And she made me a maritime dish that I love. It's called hodgepodge, which is a bunch of fresh garden vegetables thrown in a pot, cooked in cream. Okay? Love it. So I had my hodgepodge, and then the pie comes out. I go and take a bite of the pie, and I spit it out. It was so strong, and I knew right away that it was alcohol. I could tell the taste of it and everything. Something's wrong here. And I said, Mom, what did you put in this pie? And she started to chuckle, and she laughed, and she said, I ran out of vanilla, so I put moonshine in to replace it. No joke, there was a guy up the road that had a still, and they used to get moonshine from him. And so she substituted vanilla extract with moonshine. 70% proof moonshine. Now, just to give you an idea, hard liquor like rum, tequila, vodka has 40% alcohol. This had 70, okay? And I'm like, Mom, why did you put moonshine in? I understand you ran out of vanilla. Why did you do that? She says, moonshine and vanilla, they're the same. And I said to her, no, they're not. I said, if they were the same, they'd both be called vanilla, or they'd both be called moonshine. Moonshine is moonshine. Vanilla is vanilla. And everyone at the table was agreed with me, but the fight was on. The argument was on. And she would not back down. She insisted that moonshine and vanilla extract were the same thing. So I just gave up, and I said, okay, whatever. The next summer, I go back to her house, and she goes, do you remember when I was arguing with you about moonshine and vanilla? I said, oh yeah, I remember very well. She's like, I knew you were right. I just didn't want to admit it. Now, we laugh at that, but how many times have we done something similar? Parents, I'm going to give you a little piece of advice from a parent who's done parenting. Well, you'll never stop being a parent, but I don't parent little kids anymore. If you want to gain the respect of your children, when you're wrong, admit it and apologize immediately. Don't think, well, they need to honor me and understand that I'm an authority figure, so I can't let them know that I was wrong. They know you're wrong, and they will not respect you if you insist on being wrong. I learned that with my kids very quickly. And you know what? My kids, let me tell you something. Both my kids, my son will be 26 this year, and my daughter will be 23 this year. They can't, not, in a healthy way, they always want to be around us. They love and respect us. Okay? And they don't think the same as us. If you think they're just card-carrying Adventists, think again. But they know we love them and we respect them and different things like that. I would rather have their influence be, you know what I mean? Like to be for them to respect us and everything. Anyway, but this is the way we are. And and I'm not getting into this, folks. Do not start saying stuff. But this became abundantly clear during the pandemic. People took sides. Whatever they read first, they believed was true. And they took sides and everything else. There's a thing called, we don't have time to talk about it too much, but I'll get you to write it down. You can read on it on your own. It's called the truth illusory effect. That's the term. Truth illusory effect. Okay? It's a psychological observation. It's been scientifically studied. You can read stuff on it. Very interesting. But in a nutshell, the way our brains are wired, whatever we hear first about something is what we're likely to believe. And then if people question us on it, we defend it even if we're wrong. And then it becomes truth to us. It's the truth illusory effect. Illusory, like illusion, okay? Illusory, I-L-L-O-S-O-R-Y, illusory. No, I don't have that right. But my point is simply this. That's the way we're wired. And so I got in a lot of conversations during the pandemic with people that had strong views. And I'm saying, this is insanity. What you're saying, like to myself, I'm saying, this is insane. And then I started reading more and trying to figure out what was going on. And then I realized what was going on. And the more that you push against somebody that is mistaken, you're actually driving them further into error, not pulling them out. And Mrs. White has a lot to say about that, okay? All right, so let's talk about the role of emotions. And what I want to focus on today more than anything is our stress response, okay? Because this is what gets us into trouble, is our stress responses. Okay, and so what are those? On the screen, I have a leopard, and I have a young man. Does he look stressed on the bench? Okay, don't know what's going on, but let's just say his girlfriend just broke up with him. We'll just use that as an example. Okay, now suppose you're walking in the jungle somewhere, and you hear a noise, and you turn around, and this is right behind you, ready to pounce on you. Okay? Is your body going to elicit a stress response? Absolutely. And he's eliciting a stress response, right? He's having a stress response. Do you know, as far as your brain and your body is concerned, it can't tell the difference? It's the same response. If you're stressed because you're late for work, or you're stressed because somebody's about to stab you, it's the exact same response. So when you're in a conversation with somebody and you can sense your stress response elevating, it's no different than somebody about to assault you physically. So if you're wondering why when you get in conversations with people you get easily triggered, that's your stress response. That's your stress response. We all have that. Or you talk to somebody and you're just remaining calm and all of a sudden they just erupt. Have you ever had that happen? And you're like, what on earth did I just say or whatever? Their stress response, it's just like somebody's chasing them with a knife. There's no difference. There's no such thing as different stress responses. There's just stress response. That's how we're wired biologically. We're going to learn more about this, okay? So let's talk about your brain for a second. Your brain has one job. One job. You say, my brain does lots of things. No, I'm differentiating between the brain and the mind, okay? Two different things. Your brain has one job. It's to keep your body and you safe. That's what it does. Now, some of you are going to feel a great sense of relief here in a second because you're going to realize that what's going on inside of you and has been going on inside of you is absolutely normal, okay? So if you remember when Adam and Eve sinned, they noticed, the Bible says, that they were naked. They created fig leaf garments. But when God showed up, what did they do? They ran and hid. That's a stress response, correct? When God questioned them about why they did that, what was Adam's response? I ran because I was afraid. It's a stress response, right? You following me so far? Once sin came into the human experience, the brain took on a different role. Now, its big role now is to try to determine threats and give you suggestions on what to do to get safe. That's why your brain has a little voice inside that runs all the time. If you're wondering why this thing won't shut up, it's your brain giving you all kinds of suggestions. Okay? But guess what? Your brain is wrong 98% of the time. Because it's got such an orientation of fear. I'm going to just be a little vulnerable right now and tell you something. I was walking up here this morning, coming to the tent, and there was no one here. Still 20 minutes before the meeting started, but my brain told me no one's coming. You should just go, because it's trying to protect me, right? Was that a rational thought? No, it's not a rational thought.
You're amazing. You want to be here.
Well, I appreciate that. But you see what I'm saying? The inner dialogue, your brain is constantly doing this, right? Somebody says something to you or somebody doesn't return a text right away, your brain starts just going, because your brain is trying to protect you, and it's always rooted in fear. But it's wrong 98% of the time. And this is where your mind, God has given you a mind where you have to choose. Do I default to what the inner dialogue is saying? Or do I listen and believe what I know to be true about somebody? So someone doesn't return a text. Oh, I know they care about me. They love me. They must be just busy. But you instead could say, oh my goodness, I remember I didn't return a text to them one time. Maybe they're remembering that and trying to teach me a lesson. Do you see what I'm saying? Your brain is constantly, because your brain is trying to protect your body and itself from danger. So it's just throwing out suggestions constantly. So if we all have this on one level or another, but there's some of you in this room that voice drives you nuts. Just recognize it as what it is. It's just your brain giving you suggestions to try to protect you. And the fact that you can see that, it's called self-awareness or metacognition. The fact that you can observe the dialogue in your own brain. Now, this is going to be life transforming if you understand what I'm saying. The fact that you can observe this and notice it and dialogue with it means that your thoughts are not you. So when random thoughts come that you're ashamed of, they're not you. They're just biological responses. What you do with the thought, how you use your mind, that is you. So gentlemen, when you see an attractive woman and your brain is trying to tell you something that it shouldn't, don't feel ashamed and whatever else. That's what it's supposed to do. And Jesus understood this when he taught about this. He said, it's the second look that's the problem. It's the second look that's the problem. Use your mind to avert your eyes. Okay? Nobody can help the first thought. The first thought is the inner dialogue. It just comes. That should be a great relief to you guys. And every thought has an associated feeling. Did you know that? Your feelings are rooted in your thoughts. So a thought and a feeling, they're like synonymous. You cannot divorce them. You can't have a thought without a feeling, and vice versa. If you don't like your feelings, you need to change your thoughts. Because you don't have control of your feelings. If I've heard people say many times, I shouldn't feel this way, and I say, why not? Why not? That's natural to feel that way. It's completely natural. But I said, what is it that's leading you to feel that way? Let's get at the thought. And then you find out the thought is some kind of what they call cognitive distortion. So we need to replace the distortion with the truth. That's why Jesus said, you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So the point is, who are you listening to? Your brain? Your circumstances? And the devil loves to whisper in all of our ears and convince us that some things are our thoughts when they're not. But your thoughts are not you. Your mind is. So when you're talking to somebody, remember they're having this inner dialogue going on the whole time, and their brain is trying to assess whether you're a threat or not. Do you understand that? Like you do the same thing with people. You go home from camp meeting and 2 days later there's a knock at your door and you're not expecting anybody there. And you open the door and there's a guy there. Let's say he's bald, he's tatted up, right? He's only got a few teeth. And he says, "Can I come in and borrow your phone?" What is your brain doing the moment even before you open the door and see him? Right away you get this flutter of feelings like, okay, who is this? I'm not expecting anyone. Should I open the door? Blah, 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 right? And then you've got to make a decision. Some people wouldn't answer the door, right? That's what they decide to do. Okay? You had your hand up.
Yes, but I think partly you answered me. I was just going to ask that some of those ideas that come to us, wouldn't that be maybe Satan suggesting certain
Yeah,
things to us?
but not always. It's more your brain. It's more your brain than him, but yes, it's him. I read a quote in the Spirit of Prophecy, I forget where it is, where she said, Satan whispers his temptations in our ears and then persuades us that they are our own thoughts when they are his. That's why you should never build your self-worth, identity, and value on your thinking. It always should be on God's thoughts, which are in the Word of God. I have people tell me, I don't feel forgiven, and I say, so what? It's not about whether you feel forgiven or not. Are you forgiven? Well, I don't feel it. Doesn't matter. Are you forgiven? Yes. Say that again. Say you're forgiven. I am forgiven. You're replacing one thought for another. The feelings will follow. Your will is able to control what thoughts you believe and what ones you don't. It cannot control your feelings. Feelings are a result of thinking, always, the fruit of thinking. You cannot produce feelings. You can't. You produce thoughts, you believe those thoughts, and those lead to feelings. And it can happen very quickly. Very quickly. Okay? All right? So, our emotional response works like this. Our brains are designed to keep us safe. We talked about that. We have a perceived threat that triggers a stress response in the brain. The emotions always appear as a response to a perceived threat. We're talking about stress responses, not all emotions. And then you do fight or flight. So some of you, when conflict happens, your brain has a stress response, and your temperament, your personality, the way you are, you don't like conflict. So you shut down, silent treatment, you tell people you have to go, and you don't engage in the conversation. That's a flight response. There's some of you, because of your temperament and personality and other factors, when your stress response comes, you're ready for an argument. And you basically run into conflict. I'll show you. But what's really happening is a stress response. Okay? And this is what you need to understand. If you try to fight people, if you try to address things here, that's not going to work. Because the problem is way back here that they perceive a threat. They think something you're saying or who you are is scary. And you might think that's completely irrational, but that's how they feel. That's why there are some people that will never darken the door of a church. Because they went to a church when they were little and they were abused there. They associate church with a threat, and then you go in the same building and you feel great. Because you don't have a threat. My wife and I attended a funeral in a church one time for someone that was very close to her, and it took her years to be able to worship in that church freely because she associated the funeral and the death of that close person with the building that the funeral took place in. Right? It's her brain trying to keep her safe. Okay? So we're all looking for threats. So how do we respond to people's emotions? What are the steps? So these are the steps going from left to right. So you have to, first of all, recognize either in yourself or in others, this is just a natural stress response. It's not a time for finger pointing. It's not a time to say, oh man, these people are just crazy. What's wrong with them? No, this is just a natural stress response. And remember, what's our first word? To breathe, a conversational breath. You don't have to respond right away. You can pause and just breathe. I'm going to give you a breathing exercise we're going to try that's been scientifically shown to completely relax your stress response in seconds. And it works because I use it. And anyone that's stressed, has anxiety, those different things, I get them to do it. And their anxiety goes like this. Because it's a certain way to breathe that it notifies your brain that there is no threat here. You can calm down. Okay? We'll get to that later. So you have a conversational breath, you pause, and then you ask a deep question. Okay? So you can see in people's body language and different things like we looked at the other day that you can tell there's some kind of stress response going on. They're not comfortable in some way. You need to understand that their stress response is going and they perceive a threat. Rather than argue with them like on a rational level, like, well, this is the truth and different things like this, your approach to them is just very simple in a very non-threatening, lowering your voice, because when you elevate your voice, that's a threat. Lower your voice, quiet, turn down the volume a little bit and say, I'm sorry, I forget your name. What's your name? Lorraine. So Lorraine and I are talking, and I can tell she's getting threatened. This is what I say. I use her name, okay? And I say, hey, Lorraine, I can tell that you seem very uncomfortable. Can you tell me more about that? That's a deep question. Or Lorraine, I can see that you're really struggling with this. Do you mind me asking what's going on? Don't ask a closed question. A closed question is a yes or no answer. See how those are open questions? It gives people the opportunity to talk. And then you say, well, what if they say something I don't know what to say? Breath, pause, and you can say, wow, that's interesting. Could you tell me more? That's all you have to say. Because the point is for you to develop understanding and calm people down. And then when their brain realizes, wait a minute, this person isn't a threat, this person is here to help me. Then the stress response goes away, then they're ready to hear rational and truth things because they're not operating from a stress response. Does that make sense? Okay? So then you listen to understand, and when you finally get to the issue like Jesus did, answer the concern. So that woman at the well again, her number one interest was social acceptance. She was going about it all the wrong way, but that's what her biggest interest was, and that's exactly what Jesus got to her. He showed her acceptance, remember, and he elevated her. And once he did that, she was ready to accept that he was the Messiah, and then she took off, and she was a better witness to the town than his own disciples were. They just bought food and left. You see how this works? Okay? All right, so here's an example. So this is the process you go to. So you need to think to yourself quietly, this person feels threatened. What can I learn about them? Not, well, I'm going to set them straight and let them know that I'm not someone to be afraid of. Folks, you don't learn whether somebody's a non-threat to you by them telling you I'm a non-threat. You have to demonstrate it, okay? You breathe, so you inhale through your nose to fill the lungs. Take a second, shorter inhalation, then exhale through the mouth. We're going to do this exercise later. You pause, and you're thinking, what can I ask this person to let them know I want to help them, that I'm not a threat? And then you can ask something like, what would it mean for you to keep the Sabbath? Oh man, I really want to keep the Sabbath, but I love my church community. I have so many friends and different things like that. I can't imagine leaving. That's a threat. That's a fear. You need to empathize with them. Some people have deep relationships, but what do we typically do? I've seen it. I've been in those evangelistic visits. Well, Jesus said, if you love me, keep my commandments. You need to follow the truth, sister. No. That's just being dismissive. That's just not how you take care of people, okay? So then you listen and let them know you're listening by the skills I taught you the other day about reflective listening or looping for understanding, which is, making sure you got it. And then address their concerns from Scripture and your own experience. So for me, I'm the only Seventh-day Adventist in my family, so I'm very familiar with, what the truth can cost you with family and different things like that. So when I use some Scripture, but I say, hey, look, I had some real concerns with my family, and I'm not going to lie to you, it was a little rough, because they didn't understand, they were afraid, they wanted what was best for me, and they didn't understand what was going on. But you know what? We have a great relationship now, and they really respect me. Do you see that? And then that's just calming. Your voice has to be calming. Okay? Remind me to tell you something that happened last night in a conversation I had. I learned something new. Okay, so that's dealing with emotions. How do we deal with social concerns and family concerns? Look at this. This is from the book Super Communicators. I told you it's an amazing book. This is a study that was done at Boston University by Matt Moda, and this is what Matt Moda had to say. Breaking through these attitudes is difficult because you're asking someone to give up the values and beliefs at the core of how they see themselves. You'll never succeed at getting someone to change behavior if, as a prerequisite, you force them to say, everything I've believed until now is wrong. And we've done that with people. Right? That just from a completely secular study on how people change and so on, if you come at it with the idea that, well, I'm right, you're wrong, what you've always believed is wrong, you are creating resistance. You are working against yourself. Now, it might be true that scripturally they are wrong, but you've got to approach it in the right way. Was the woman at the well wrong? Was it good for her to be sleeping around with everyone's husband? No. Did Jesus approve of that behavior? No. But did he treat her as less than? No. No. So what can we do? Okay. So the Rwandan genocide, I want to talk about this for a minute. This is an article here. Do I have this in your handouts? Do I have the reference there? Okay, so I don't, do I? No. Folks, what I'm going to share with you next may be a bit hard for you to hear. And if you want to take a picture of that and look up this article, this article will talk about it. I did some missionary work in Africa years ago, and I was in Rwanda. And I got to see the scenes of where the genocide took place and different things. Anyway, folks, the church is unclear how many Seventh-day Adventists perished in the genocide. There was about 800,000 people killed in a 3-month period, 100,000 in the first month. Most people were bludgeoned to death with machetes. The scene of the largest massacre in Rwanda was actually an Adventist University medical complex. The guy that betrayed them was a conference president. And all the people went into the church, thousands went into the church for refuge where he told them to go, and then he got the rebels, and they threw grenades in there. I was in that church. They had a skull up at the front of the church of one of the people that was massacred. There's a mass grave right in front of the church. It's pretty harrowing stuff to see. So we lost somewhere between 10,000 and 100,000 by estimates of church officials, but it was a hard way to track how many exactly. But folks, the genocide was basically the Hutus in Rwanda felt that they were not getting enough of a piece of the pie, and the Tutsis, who were more naturally, I don't want to use the word aggressive, what's the word? Assertive. They had the more high-paying jobs, but they were the minority. Like, in Rwanda, it was about 90% Hutu, about 8% Tutsi, and 2% Pygmy. And it was the Hutus slaughtering the Tutsis. And you say, what has this got to do with anything? The point is that many, many, many Seventh-day Adventist Christians and other Christians from Hutu tribe murdered Tutsi people. So their social identity, the reason we're talking about this, their social identity was not rooted in Christ and the church, but in their tribalism. Their Christianity had not penetrated. So they saw themselves first as a Hutu, Christian second. Do you see what I'm saying? The people you're talking to, it's the same way. We had a lady come to our church in Oshawa College Park Church. She's now a member there, but she was visiting at the time. This was a couple years ago. She gave her testimony. She lived through the genocide as a teenager. And she wasn't an Adventist at the time, and it says it really bothered her because she watched the Adventists of the church slaughtering people, and then they stopped at sundown Friday and didn't slaughter anyone over Sabbath, and then they would pick up their machetes at sundown Saturday and keep slaughtering. And they went to church, yeah. Do you see how twisted and sick our minds can be? Now, we point the finger at them and say, oh, those people. But, folks, they're humans just like us. They're not some kind of savage, primitive people that we're more sophisticated and we don't do that. If you were honest with yourself, you make a lot more decisions socially and emotionally than you want to admit. Okay? And you say, well, I couldn't imagine ever doing something like that. I'm sure if you talked to them years before the genocide and asked them, they would say, there's no way I would ever do that. Okay? So the only reason I bring that up is to show you the power of social factors in our decision making. So how do we respond to social and familial concerns? Again, this is from Super Communicators. I've changed it around a little bit, but you first draw out their multiple identities. Everyone has multiple identities. There's not just one. You're a daughter, you're a mother, you're a Christian, you're maybe you're a nurse, or whatever, We have all these. So you have to draw out their multiple identities, and you have to put everyone on an equal footing. You cannot approach people like, I'm right, your family's been wrong, you need to adopt what I'm saying because I'm right, and I have the Bible to prove it. Doesn't work. So what you need to do is look for similarities with the person to create social connections. What do you have in common? I hope you have at least one good friend in your life. If you do have one good friend or more than one good friend, you will find that you have this friend because you have a common interest. Friendship is rooted in common interests. So maybe you started playing pickleball with somebody, and now you got a friend that you might go to eat with once in a while or something like that. Your common interest that brought your relationship together was pickleball. And what often happens is that one of you stop playing pickleball and the friendship dissipates. Right? You had common interests when you were in high school, and there's people from high school you haven't spoken to since you graduated. Why? Because the common interest is gone. So in order for this to work, you have to find the common interests. And that's why sometimes I have handed Bible studies over to someone else because I know they have common interests with this person that I don't have. Okay? And then you need to manage the environment. What do I mean by that? So when people are making decisions, if the environment you're in to try to make them make a decision is causing them social pressure as it is, it's a bad place to make a decision. Right? Like if you're trying to lead someone to keep the Sabbath and you're sitting in the Baptist church parking lot of their church, it's going to be harder for them. So you have to manage the environment. You have to be aware of where you are with this person. So here's an example. I understand that keeping the Sabbath seems like betraying your parents. How do you think following Jesus will help your children? Why did I switch it to children? Remember the first step. What's the first step? What's the first step we just went over? Look at your papers. What's the first step? They have how many identities? Multiple identities. So right now, what's their stress response, what's firing is, this is betraying my parents. But you also know they have the identity of being a parent themselves. Do you see what I'm saying? And every parent, good parent, is thinking what's in the best interest of my child. So will you switch the conversation? So you've been understanding. I understand that it seems that way, but I know you want what's best for your kids. How do you think this decision would affect your children? And all of a sudden it triggers something in them like, oh yeah, I know what's right and I'm not doing it. What kind of message will that send to my kids? So you have to, if one identity, social factor is causing a problem, don't let that be the thing that carries the day. Switch the conversation. What about some of their other identities that they care as much or more about? Don't take the no on one thing because there's other things they're just not considering because they're in a stress response. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? And so then, number 2, you can say like this, I'm no expert or super Christian, but I do believe that Jesus wants Christians to keep the Sabbath. You're humble. You say, look, I really believe that this is important. And then you look, I remember when I chose to keep the Sabbath. I thought my family would disown me, but we're closer than ever. Okay? And then you manage. So you try to converse in a neutral location away from where the social pressures exist. So if you have say a wife who is really convicted and you're doing Bible studies in the home and she is struggling with the decision, leave the decision, ask her out for coffee or lunch or something, and try to bring the conversation back to the decision in a neutral place. Because if she's home, she might be thinking about her angry husband who's told her, if you do this, I'll leave you or something, right? Manage the environment. Does that make sense? Yes. Yeah? Okay, so how do I gain decisions? So there's a 3-step method to gaining decisions. How are we doing here? Oh, good, we're good with time. Is it clear to you from the Bible that God wants you to, and you fill in the blanks? Is it clear to you from the Bible? And 99% of people will say yes. If they say no, what does that tell you? You need to go back to the Bible, right? Don't go any further. You need to go back and you need to ask them why it's not clear. Like, what is it that you're not, whatever. And then if they say yes, always use their name. That's everyone's favorite word, by the way. Did you know that? Is their name. And saying it properly. And spelling it properly. That's everyone's favorite word. Seriously. Okay? So let's say the guy's name was Gary. Gary, I know you love Jesus. Notice I'm affirming their relationship. I'm not making their decision an indicator of whether they love Jesus. I'm affirming them and saying, Gary, I know you love Jesus. Is there any good reason for you not to, and you fill in the blank, keep the Sabbath? And Gary will talk to you and he'll whatever, and then once you deal with those things, you say to him, Gary, I'd like to invite you to keep your first Sabbath with me. Would you like to make this decision? And if Gary says yes, you say, what time can I pick you up? Even if you have to go across town and it's inconvenient for you, I don't care. Coming into a new place on your own is intimidating. And you do not leave their side the entire time. You're their best friend, and if anyone wants to talk to you, they're going to come to you. You're not going to just go leave Gary on his own, because invariably some wackadoo that's in the church that believes some crazy thing is going to try to get a hold of Gary. That's happened to me I don't know how many times. I'm speaking from experience. Okay? And most churches have at least one wackadoo. Okay, that's what I've noticed. I remember as a pastor years ago, I was complaining to my conference president about one particular wackadoo at my church. He wouldn't leave me alone. I had to kick him out of my car one time. He grabbed the steering wheel as I was driving down the highway and pulled it. And I got his hand off my steering wheel. I said, if you do that again, I will kick you out of this car. And he had really bad knees. He could barely walk and everything like that. I wanted to slug him. I'll be honest with you. I've got a wife and kids. What are you doing? Yeah. What's he do? Grabs the wheel again right afterwards. Pulled over on the side of the highway. I said, get out. And he was a long way from where he needed to get. He begged and pleaded. I said, get out of my car. And out he went. Wackadoo, man. Did all kinds of crazy things, right? You can't leave Gary alone to the wackadoos. And that's not just for the first visit. That's you got for multiple visits. And when somebody comes up to you to talk to you and Gary is sitting there, don't make Gary feel awkward by engaging in a conversation that Gary has no idea about. Start by introducing your friend Gary. Don't forget Gary is right there. Don't invite anyone on their first Sabbath to communion. Look at the church calendar. Go talk to the pastor ahead of time and say, Pastor, I'm about to bring someone to church. I want to make sure you're not going to switch the schedule unknowingly and I'm going to show up and it's communion. I need to know. Most of them will think you're weird enough as it is. Now you're going to start washing each other's feet. No, let's be real. Okay, that's not normal behavior for a lot of people. Feet is a kind of a lot of people don't like feet, okay? And Gary, if he knows what's going on, he sees what's going on, Gary's thinking, nobody's touching my feet. I didn't come here to get my feet touched. Okay, let's be real. I'm not trying to make fun. I'm serious. Very awkward for people. Okay? And then, hopefully it'll be a potluck. But if it's not, you're inviting Gary home for lunch. Oh, well, I had something else planned. Too bad. Move your schedule. Because you're trying to appeal to Gary's social needs and interests, right? You want Gary, when you drop him off home, to say, man, this is the best Saturday I've ever had. And it won't because the sermon is so great. It'll be because you were great. Okay? And if you know that there are other great people in your church, tell them ahead of time, look, I'm going to invite this guy to church on the first week. Don't overwhelm him or anything, but could you just make sure you introduce yourself and just, whatever. You know who the safe people are, right? Yeah. And you know who the ones who aren't. You need to protect them. Yeah. You need to protect them, okay? I can tell you some tragic stories. Well, I will tomorrow about that. So here's some helpful reminders. Answer your questions from the Bible. Handle objections from the Bible and appeal to their relationship with Jesus. Handle resistance by getting to the emotional and social factors that are fueling it. Attempt to meet those needs. And the last one is so important. Let the person decide for themselves. If they say no, don't look disappointed, even though you will be disappointed. Okay? Just keep on loving on them. I had a guy that resisted me for months. He was an usher in our evangelistic series, and he wasn't baptized yet, but I couldn't get this guy to make a final decision. But I just kept visiting him, kept involving him, and then one day he comes to me and says, I'm ready. I'm ready. Now, what do you think would have happened if when he first resisted and said no, I would have said, okay, well, I'm moving on to someone else. But we do that. I've even had evangelists tell me, if they say no 3 times, ditch them, find someone else. Yeah. All right, let's talk about our big one here. Our number one fear as human beings is the fear of rejection. Here's from 1 Samuel 8:17. Heed the voice of the people. This is talking about when the people demanded a king and Samuel was feeling rejected. God says this, heed the voice of the people and all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me that I should not reign over them. Rejection is the most painful human experience you can have. I have a whole sermon just on rejection. Well, actually, I have a whole series on Christ and emotions. I did an evangelistic series this spring, 6-part series on Isaiah 53. I talked about loneliness, I talked about rejection, I talked about depression, I talked about anxiety, because it's all in Isaiah 53. If you want to book me for your church sometime, get a hold of me. Okay. 2 of them are on YouTube. They didn't record the others. 2 of them are on YouTube. If you look up the Willowdale Seventh Adventist Church YouTube channel, you'll find those 2 sermons. But rejection, I learned as I was preparing for this sermon, rejection has the same pain centers as physical pain. The difference is physical pain will go away. I could get you to cry right now because I could take you through an exercise where it will bring up a period of painful rejection, and the rejection will be just as painful now as it was then. Rejection is our number one fear. I'm not going to do that to you, by the way. But anyway, so here's where we're going to learn to breathe. Fear of rejection. So you need to recognize your natural stress response. It's just natural, okay? But this is how you calm your nervous system down to tell your brain you're not under threat. So if you're facing anxiety, you're having a stress response, your children are anxious, they can't calm down. I'm telling you, this works. I use it all the time on myself and on other people, okay? So we're gonna do this together. What we're gonna do is breathe through our nose, and you're gonna try to take the deepest breath you can through your nose, but not breathe out. And then you're gonna try to even inhale more through your nose, and then you're gonna slowly release that out of your mouth at least 4 seconds. Okay? We're gonna do that together. Ready? Okay, on the count of 3, when I say 3, we're gonna all inhale the first time. Okay, you ready? 1, 2, 3. Again, and then out. And that will naturally, now you don't just do it once. Do it 3, 4 times. When you feel that stress response coming, and your brain it will trigger your brain, and the brain will say, okay, I'm not under threat. I can calm the systems down. Okay? And it works. I use it in cornhole competitions. I use it in awkward conversations. There's someone I know that has been calling me almost daily. They're having problems with anxiety and so on. And we go through the breathing exercises, and they calm right down, and they say thank you, and then they go on their way. Okay? All right? It works. It works. Okay? And make sure when you're asking people, it's always an invitation, not a demand. Okay, rapid fire. Never argue. If you argue, you're just strengthening a stress response in people. Respect their emotions, understand social factors, affirm their love for Jesus, and let God press conviction. And that's it.
Can you put it back again?
That's not on your sheets?
Yeah, but we need the answer.
Oh, you need the answers. My bad. Okay, I'm going to get an opportunity for questions here, but before I do, now that everybody's here, I just want to make an announcement I made at the beginning, okay? So, tomorrow morning is my only presentation tomorrow, and then I'm leaving to go back east, okay? So, come tomorrow morning. If you know people that normally come in the afternoons, tell them that I'm only going to be presenting tomorrow morning. And we're doing it a little earlier because I have a tight window to get to the airport. So we're going to do it at 9:15, just 15 minutes early, okay? 9:15. And what we're going to be learning is how to get people to come to church and how to get people staying at church, okay? Have you ever tried to get someone to church and it didn't work, or they didn't stay coming? They voted with their feet and said nope, okay? Come tomorrow, okay? For those of you who are saying, oh, but I really want to hear Jennifer Jill tomorrow or some other seminar, don't worry. Jennifer Jill is presenting 3 times tomorrow. Once in the morning and once in the afternoon. Well, twice in the afternoon. She's doing her first one that she missed, and then she's doing her regular Friday one, okay? So I went to the office and confirmed that just to make sure and to let you know. Okay, any questions about the role of emotions, thoughts, stress responses, social factors? Anybody have any questions for me?